قبل عام، وقعت أمريكا في غرام عامل النظافة المغني من تير هوت.
أجل، ريتشارد جودال فاز، كما قد تتذكرون، ببرنامج أمريكا جوت.
A middle school janitor stood in a cafeteria and sang like nobody was watching, except somebody was. And that phone video quietly changed his entire life. Richard Goodall spent 23 years mopping floors and cleaning tables before the whole country learned his name. Behind the golden buzzer, the confetti, and the $1 million prize sat a story soaked in loss, rejection, and a family secret he never expected to uncover. Now, years after that first viral clip, Richard has finally made a decision that closes one chapter of his life for good. Richard Goodall's real story is far more surprising than the one America watched on stage. The janitor who shocked America. Richard Goodall was born in Indianapolis and spent nearly his entire life just down the road in Terre Haute, Indiana. Nothing about his early years pointed toward national fame. He built a quiet, steady life around routine, family, and community. For more than 2 decades, Goodall worked as a custodian for the Vigo County School Corporation, most recently at West Vigo Middle School. He was not just the man who cleaned the hallways. Students knew him as the friendly face who greeted them every morning and hummed classic rock songs while wiping down cafeteria tables. Music had always been part of Goodall's life long before any of this began. He sang in choirs, performed karaoke with friends, and spent years singing in gospel trios around Terre Haute, treating music as a personal joy rather than a career path he ever seriously expected to chase. Friends who knew him back then often said his voice sounded far too big for the small rooms he was singing in. In 2022, that habit of singing while he worked ended up changing everything. A student recorded him performing Don't Stop Believin' by Journey and posted the clip online without telling him. By the next morning, the video was already spreading fast across social media. News outlets picked up the story within days, and comment sections filled with praise from strangers who had never met him. Even television personality Howie Mandel noticed the clip online and remarked publicly that Goodall belonged on a stage far bigger than a middle school cafeteria. Yet through all of it, Goodall kept showing up to work in the same uniform, doing the same job he had done for over 20 years, completely unaware of how far that single video would eventually carry him. Before that viral moment ever led anywhere bigger, Goodall had already tried once to get noticed. He auditioned for The Voice at some point earlier, hoping for any kind of break. Nothing came of it, not even a callback. And he quietly returned to his normal routine without complaint, treating the silence as just another part of chasing a dream that rarely rewards people on the first try. 2 years after his cafeteria video went viral, producers from America's Got Talent finally reached out. In May of 2024, Goodall boarded an airplane for the very first time in his life, flying to Los Angeles to audition in front of judges and cameras on a scale he had never experienced before. Up to that point, he had never traveled west of the Missouri River, making the entire trip feel like stepping into a completely unfamiliar world. His nerves showed the moment he stepped on stage, but once the music started, something in him settled completely. His performance of Don't Stop Believin' moved the entire room, and Judge Heidi Klum pressed the golden buzzer, sending him straight through to the live shows without any further auditions. Judge Simon Cowell later called the moment one of his favorite auditions in the show's history. From there, Goodall treated every performance like a gift rather than a competition. He dedicated How Am I Supposed to Live Without You to his partner during the quarterfinals, brought raw energy to Eye of the Tiger in the semifinals, and closed out the finale with a performance of Faithfully that left almost no dry eyes in the building. When the season ended, Richard Goodall was named the winner of season 19, becoming the oldest champion in the show's history at 55 years old. He also became the first singer to take the title in 5 full years, breaking a streak of specialty acts that had dominated the competition since the previous vocalist 1 year earlier. It was a storybook ending on television, but the real story behind that win ran far deeper than anything viewers saw on stage. The heartbreak that shaped his voice. Long before America ever heard his voice, Goodall had already lived through years of quiet disappointment. After the rejection from The Voice, he found comfort performing with a small gospel band, traveling and singing together in a routine that gave him purpose outside of work. Then the pandemic hit, and almost overnight, that entire chapter of his life collapsed. Venues shut their doors, gatherings stopped completely, and the band he had leaned on for years simply fell apart, leaving Goodall without one of the few places where his music had truly felt understood. Nothing prepared him for what came next. In 2021, Goodall lost his first wife, Patricia Sue, to kidney cancer. She had supported him through years of doubt and disappointment, and her death left him unmoored in a way that grief alone cannot fully describe. The loss went far beyond ordinary sadness. The daily routines they had built together disappeared overnight, and the home they had shared suddenly felt unfamiliar and far too quiet. Goodall continued reporting to work each morning simply because that discipline was part of who he was, even while privately learning how to navigate a life he barely recognized. Anymore, he kept showing up to work because that was simply who he was, but those closest to him could hear the weight in his voice whenever he sang afterward. That sorrow never fully disappeared. It became part of the emotional depth that later moved millions of television viewers without them ever knowing the full story behind it. Even after everything Goodall had lost, life eventually offered him something unexpected. In 2022, he met a woman named Angie, long before cameras or television contracts ever entered the picture. She saw him simply as Richard, not as a viral video or a future celebrity. Over time, Angie became the steady presence Goodall leaned on through the entire whirlwind of his America's Got Talent journey. She encouraged him during moments of doubt and reminded him that he deserved real happiness rather than just fleeting moments of attention. Just days before the season finale, the two quietly got married in California, choosing to celebrate their relationship privately rather than turning it into a television spectacle. Family and close friends from his AGT journey attended, and the couple shared a quiet dinner together afterward on the beach before returning to the chaos of finale week. It was a decision made for entirely personal reasons, not for any camera crew watching nearby. Goodall later credited Angie directly during his winning moment, crediting her support as one of the biggest reasons he found the courage to keep pushing through every round of the competition. Success brought its own physical toll as well. Shortly after his win, the demands of touring, interviews, and rehearsals pushed Goodall to undergo hernia surgery in 2024, a procedure he mostly kept private while he quietly recovered and reassessed just how much his life had changed in such a short amount of time. The recovery period forced him to slow down for the first time since his life had turned upside down, giving him rare, quiet moments to process everything that had happened. Angie did more than support Goodall emotionally. She also encouraged him to explore a part of his life he had never dared to look into before, the identity of his biological father, a mystery he had carried quietly since childhood after being adopted as an infant. Using an ancestry service, Goodall and Angie eventually tracked down the man, a retired canine police officer and Army veteran named Hubert, living not far away in Indiana. Remarkably, Hubert had no idea Goodall existed at all until the two of them finally connected. Their reunion also revealed something else entirely unexpected. 3 siblings Goodall had never met or even known about growing up. According to Goodall, his biological father actually recognized him first, having seen his face on television during the America's Got Talent season and immediately suspecting a connection. When the two men finally spoke, Hubert reportedly asked whether Goodall was the same janitor guy from the singing competition, still stunned that after all those years, without knowing he had a child, that same child happened to be someone he had already seen on national television. Goodall shared the news publicly through social media, introducing his biological father to fans and thanking Angie directly for encouraging him to search in the first place. He explained that without her push, he likely never would have gone looking at all, content instead to leave that part of his history unanswered forever. For years, Goodall had made peace with never knowing where half of his story came from, treating the unanswered questions as simply part of growing up adopted. Meeting Hubert did not erase that earlier chapter of quiet acceptance, but it gave him something he had stopped expecting to ever find, a living connection to the other half of his own history. Goodall has since described the moment as one of the most meaningful surprises of his entire life, giving him a sense of belonging he never realized had been missing. It added an entirely new layer to a story that had already captured the attention of millions of viewers across the country. Why he went back to mopping floors. Once the cameras stopped rolling, most people assumed Goodall would leave his custodial job behind entirely and chase a full-time music career instead. That assumption turned out to be wrong, at least for a good while longer than anyone predicted. Goodall simply returned to work at West Vigo Middle School, continuing to clean classrooms and wax floors the same way he always had. When asked why, he kept his answer simple, explaining that he genuinely enjoyed the students, the staff, and the structure that job had given his life for over 20 years. His hometown embraced him in return. He received a key to the city of Terre Haute, and the school held an emotional pep rally in his honor, filled with cheering students and tearful teachers, thanking him for representing their community with such genuine humility. Local news stations covered the celebration extensively, treating it less like a school event and more like a hometown parade for one of their own. That same community had already shown its support well before he ever won anything. When the show first required him to travel to Los Angeles, it was not a corporation or sponsorship that covered the cost. Friends, neighbors, and strangers who had watched his viral video pooled their own money together through local fundraisers just to help him get there in the first place. New opportunities kept arriving alongside his normal routine. Goodall performed the national anthem at an Indiana Pacers game, opened a show for fellow Judge favorite Howie Mandel, and appeared at local holiday events like the Circle of Lights and the Riverside Festival of Lights, all while still showing up to his job most mornings. Co-workers and students eventually stopped treating him any differently, something Goodall described as a relief rather than a disappointment. Seeing him in the hallway every single day made the fame feel less like a spotlight and more like a normal part of who he already was, which suited him just fine. He often said the whole experience felt like anyone's game to win, and that he never walked onto that stage expecting a guaranteed victory, only hoping people would understand how much singing truly meant to him rather than rushing into a record deal. Goodall approached his music career slowly and carefully. He wanted to grow at a pace that felt natural, staying connected to the community that had supported him long before any television producer ever noticed his talent. On August 29th of 2025, Goodall released his debut single, Long Time Coming, recorded in Nashville alongside experienced producers. Announcing the release on social media, he described feeling like the luckiest man alive and thanked fans for asking what direction his music would take next. He shared previews of the song on social media in the months leading up to release, giving fans small glimpses of the tone and emotion behind the project. Working with a new management team, Goodall carefully weighed each new opportunity that came his way rather than accepting every offer immediately. While building his solo career, Goodall also joined a local group called Sugar Street, performing smaller shows that let him experiment without the pressure of a national spotlight. Those performances reminded why he had loved singing long before any of this attention ever existed, giving him a space to grow as an artist away from cameras and reality show pressure entirely. In August of 2025, Goodall returned to the America's Got Talent stage for the show's 20th anniversary special, opening the night with Eye of the Tiger. He later performed Long Time Coming alongside Journey guitarist Neil Schon during the season 20 finale, a full-circle moment tied directly back to the song that started his entire journey. Watching his original audition clip again backstage that night, Goodall admitted it hit him harder than expected, serving as a reminder of just how much had changed since that very first performance. The goodbye that changed everything. By late 2025, Goodall made something clear that fans had quietly hoped to hear. Music was not simply a temporary chapter connected to a reality show. It was the direction he intended to keep walking toward, built on something that had always been part of him rather than something the cameras had created out of nowhere. In November of 2025, Goodall headlined the Vigo County YMCA Inspiration Gala back home in Terre Haute, performing both his new single and the song that started everything, Don't Stop Believin'. The event raised money for local scholarships, blending his music career directly with the community that raised him, giving families and children a chance to see him perform without ever leaving their hometown. Around this same period, Goodall began speaking more seriously about future plans, including a possible collaboration with America's Got Talent judge Simon Cowell and early conversations about a full-length album. Discussions also began forming around a potential book deal chronicling his story of perseverance and unexpected discovery, along with early hints from his wife about the possibility of a future film adaptation, an idea that would later become reality far sooner than anyone expected. When asked jokingly who should play him if a movie ever happened, Goodall laughed off the question without taking it too seriously, a small sign of how comfortable he had become discussing his own growing fame. None of these new ambitions ever pulled him fully away from Terre Haute or the people who supported him from the very beginning. He kept posting everyday moments from his life alongside the bigger milestones, staying connected to fans who told him his journey gave them hope in their own lives. For a long time, Goodall balanced two completely different lives, one behind a mop and one behind microphone. That balance has now officially shifted. In the summer of 2026, after 25 years of service, Goodall officially retired from his custodial position with the Vigo County School Corporation. He described the decision as emotional rather than easy, admitting that walking those familiar hallways one final time hit him harder than he expected. The quiet early mornings before students arrived had always felt peaceful, but the moment children filled the hallways for his final days on the job, the reality of leaving finally caught up with him. Entertainment, he said, is far less stable than a steady paycheck, making the choice to fully step away from his old job genuinely scary rather than simple. Colleagues who had worked alongside him for years described the final send-off as bittersweet, filled with the same warmth that had followed him since the very first viral video years earlier. For a building full of students and staff who had watched his entire journey unfold in real time, saying goodbye to their janitor felt like closing out a story they had all quietly been part of together. Alongside that retirement came another major announcement nobody saw coming. Goodall signed a deal with production companies Everard Entertainment and Mad Chance to bring his life story to the big screen as a feature film, with writer Chris Perizzo attached to develop the script. The producers behind the project pointed directly to his win, his marriage, and the surprise discovery of his biological family as proof that his story was almost too unbelievable not to tell. Producers involved in the project have called his journey the perfect example of the American dream, a story about never giving up regardless of age or circumstance. For Goodall himself, the reaction remains grounded. He still describes himself simply as a regular guy who happened to get the chance of a lifetime, joking that nobody could have made up a story quite like his own even if they tried, and finally deciding it was time to fully step into it. Looking back at everything, from a viral cafeteria video to a wedding on a California beach, from losing a wife to finding a father he never knew existed, Goodall's story reads less like a lucky break and more like years of quiet persistence finally catching up to him all at once. From a quiet janitor humming in a school hallway to a headlining artist with a film deal in the works, Richard Goodall proved that ordinary routines can hide extraordinary talent. His story is not just about winning a talent show. It is about family, loss, love, and finally choosing to bet fully on a dream. If this journey inspired anyone watching, hit like and subscribe for more real stories worth telling.